Thank you for joining us for the State of Leadership, Simple and Beyond. That is Robert Hilliard. I am the silent muted Whitney Wiley. That's appropriate for what we were talking about before we went
It's
live.
very, very, very appropriate because we were talking about that BBC anchor that got caught giving somebody the one finger salute when they went back onto air, right? And so we'll be following that story because that has some self-leadership implications.
No doubt. Be be careful.
She wasn't giving this one finger salute either.
Oh my God. So we are here on Thursday. I don't think I finished saying what I was going to say. I'm Whitney Wiley. That was Robert Hilliard. I'm Whitney Wiley. And this is us on Thursdays, 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, talking all things leadership, even ones that go sideways. So it's simple issues that go sideways, right? And so we are going to be talking today about building effective teams. Building effective teams and how we can do that, how you can do that, and some suggestions, and talking about various aspects related to you being able to address team dynamics in terms of balancing issues between people, so conflict and what your role is in building teams, right? So the strategies that you can use, managing conflict within your team, things like that. Collaboration, right? Ultimately, teamwork is about collaborating and what it takes to create it. And of course, we record both from our respective homes on the two coasts of the United States. And my neighbor has decided that today, right now, is the time to do his yard work. So
I can hear it over here.
If you hear anything, that's what that buzzing sound is. And then change and how to measure success. So those are the topics that we will be discussing within our conversation. I've got some questions that I want to pose for us to ask and answer, and for things for you to think about as you are at home watching today. So Robert, any opening thoughts on building effective teams?
My opening thought is we've covered this before, and it's something that we feel that we should bring up every once in a while, because you can never overemphasize teamwork, because it is really the linchpin of your organization. Yep. So it's the linchpin of your department. By organization, we mean any context that you're working with others. It could be your department, it could be your family business, it could be your corporate organization, but is the linchpin of your organization. So that's why we bring this up again, and we won't be bringing it up many other times too.
We have to keep bringing it up, because the whole point of you leading is, who are you leading, right? And how are you going to level up or elevate the members of the group? And we've talked about this before, that if it's just a group of people, it's not a team necessarily, right? Just because you're a group of people doesn't make you a team.
Absolutely.
And so what does it take for you to actually be a team? And not only a team, but a high functioning team, one that is collaborative, adaptable, and innovative as a part of what you're doing. Because you could be a group of people, you could be a team, but you could be a low functioning, dysfunctional team. And that doesn't serve anyone except maybe consultants and their opportunity to come and help.
That's true.
Right? So tell us what does it take to be a team? How does one go from being a group of people to actually being a team?
That's a really great question. On the very basic level, it takes a common focus. So the team needs something that brings everybody together, a common focus that galvanizes them and keeps them pointed toward the goal that you set out. Of course, they need goals. Milestones are also important there, but it starts with a common focus. And the secondary part of that is helping the team members link their personal values to that common focus that you have.
Mm-hmm. So who makes the decision of what that common focus is?
It's usually the leader. but it can be created by the team itself as well. A lot of times the team doesn't have the luxury of being involved in that. If you're in an organization, they're not going to be, not everybody can be involved in all of that stuff. The more people you do get involved, of course, the more accountability you're going to create. However, it's usually the leader that creates that.
And the way I see it is that, taking into account what you just said, everyone is not going to be involved. And in some aspects, the team leader may not have total control of that either. If you're in an organization that has a strategic plan, right, and it tells you what your goals are, those are your goals, right? And so the way they get implemented can be determined by the team leader and the members of the team. But depending on the organization and how you're structured and all of that, it could be that the goals are actually created by the organization in terms, and it could be the board, it could be the leadership team, or it could be the organization that has tapped into what team members are there to help figure out what those goals are, right? So the way I see this is that every organization that's in business has a purpose, and that's to solve the problems of its constituency, its clients, its customers, right? Whatever it is that you're in business for. And then every part of the organization that's serving those clients, those customers and constituencies has a part to play in that. And so what you're doing is understanding and looking at your purpose. And so why are you there? And that will help to inform, right, how you actually create the goals that allow you to serve that purpose. And that is, depending on, again, the way your organization is structured, will help you determine what those common foci are.
And I want to just piggyback on something that you said about strategic plan. In many cases, it's the leaders that do that, but we are firm believers that the more people you get involved in your strategic plan, the more accountability, again, I want to put that out there, that they'll have. People will do more of what they help create than if you just tell them, hey, the leadership team, the 5 people that are on the leadership team created the strategic plan, and now you guys all have to do it. I can almost guarantee that will not work for you. We've seen it so many times before. Whitnie and I have been involved in that. So that's something that, but in many organizations, that's how they do it. Yeah. They will just have the leadership team create the strategic plan, and then they roll it out, and then they wonder why 75% of strategic plans don't work.
Not working.
Right.
And then you mentioned accountability, right? And each team member has a part to play in accountability. And I think it's important that you don't look at accountability as discipline, right? There may be some of that ultimately down the line that plays a part, but accountability really is about responsibility, taking responsibility, owning your part, right? Understanding what your role is, what your tasks are, what you're being asked to do or mandated to do, and um, owning that, so that one, you hold yourself accountable for doing what you're supposed to be doing, and then you can hold each other accountable. And one of the things that creates a lot of havoc in teams is that there's no accountability. No one is owning their part, and you are blaming each other for things not getting done.
Absolutely. I think one of the things, one phrase that should be eliminated from a leader's vocabulary is just get it done. Because a lot of times when you tell the team just get it done, I'm leaving it all up to you to figure that it doesn't get people like, well, who's going to do that? It creates a lot of confusion and it doesn't get done. I had a leader that was big on that, would just say, I don't care who does it, just some, and everyone's busy, everyone is doing their own thing. Sometimes as a leader, you have to say, you're the person responsible. And here's why. You have the skill set, you have the experience, you've done this before, whatever it is. I need you to learn this. I need you to get better. Whatever that is, sometimes as the leader, that's your job to point it out. And I think the reason why I never had a real conversation with this person about this, why they did that, I think my gut tells me is they wanted to be liked. So they didn't want their followers, the team members, not to dislike them. So they was, I'm leaving it up to you to figure it out.
And then there was chaos, I imagine, right? Or throwing each other under the bus, and everybody thinks there's a story about, and I don't have it in front of me because it just came to me. If I'd thought about this earlier, everybody's somebody and nobody. And maybe the next time you're talking for an extended period of time, I'll look that up. It's I'll Google it real quick and see if I can't get that story. So so you have a group, there's a common focus, goal, right? Yeah, they're moving in the same direction. They've got this shared focus, but the team is still made up of individuals who have varying strengths and weaknesses. How does that play into what the team does? And we talk as one of the components, pillars of Simple, and the Simple leadership method is leveraging, right? And leveraging strengths, and that allows you to minimize or balance those weaknesses. How do the individual strengths and weaknesses of the team members play into what they're doing and ultimately being an effective team?
Well, you certainly want to put people in a place where their strengths can be utilized, so that but you also want to balance that with, hey, you don't do this particular thing so well. Let's get you some training or some resources to help you do that. So you want to put folks where their strengths can be utilized and put a plan in place to help them be better at some other things that they're perhaps not so good at. You also want a team with complementary strengths. So perhaps this person does this one thing very well, but they don't do these other things, but this other person can fill those gaps that this other person has. So the team is more well-rounded. And I think as a leader, you need to do that. You need to surround yourself with people that do things better than you do. And I think many leaders are looking for people that are they have these similar to me bias. I want a team of people that are just like me. And that creates a problem, because if those people are just like you, they may absolutely have the same strengths. They're certainly going to have the same weaknesses, especially if you're not admitting you don't like to look at what you're weak at.
Right. And it's like any relationship, if everyone is the same, right? Then what are you doing? Like you said, balancing those weaknesses. What are you doing to address the piece of the puzzle that nobody, right, is really equipped to handle? And so then you are stuck with everybody, then trying to do the same things, the same aspects of the job, because this is where we're all strong. And people tend to want to do what they're good at, right? Rather than doing the things that they're not so good at.
Well, that's one of the things. And I remember a long time ago, I have to recall the book. I think I have it, but I don't want to say they were talking about Tiger Woods and how he won his first championship. And he had a coach that was like, "You're great at these things here. You're not good at the sand trap. You get in the sand trap and you are just not good. We're not trying to make you excellent at getting out of the sand trap. We're trying to make you just a little better at getting out of the sand trap." So when they were able to work on that and just make some incremental but really important improvements in that part of his game, he was able to win a championship. That's what you're trying to do with your team. I think that's a really good story that leaders should remember about their team. Everybody has weaknesses. And as a leader, it's your job to point it out and help people create a plan to be better at those things. I remember the very best piece of advice. It wasn't really a piece of advice. It was a comment that one of my leaders gave me during my performance appraisal. I got a really, really excellent performance appraisal. And then my manager turned to me and said, "But you are not a good multitasker, and I need you to be better." And it was something that I made a plan for, to get better at. I'm still not great at it because you know how I work. I like to hyper focus on something until it's, as polished as I can get it, and then I'll move to something else. But there is something to be said for multitasking. So what I've done for myself is I still function the way I typically like to function, but when I need to multitask, I purposely set it up so I have to move from topic to topic and task to task in the most efficient way.
I like that. I like that. I want to go back. I found the story. And so
No, I did that for you. I kept talking.
I'm talking about responsibility and accountability. And I also think this fits into this conversation about strengths and weaknesses. So this is a story about 4 people named everybody, somebody, anybody, and nobody. There was an important job to be done, and everybody was sure that somebody would do it. Anybody could have done it, but nobody did it. Somebody got angry about that because it was everybody's job. Everybody thought anybody could do it, but nobody realized that everybody wouldn't do it. It ended up that everybody blamed somebody when nobody did what anybody could have done. And the clear message about that is simply that no one took responsibility, so nothing got accomplished. And so whether it is purely going back to your point of leaders not saying just get it done, right? So that's like one extreme, and no delegation, no clear responsibilities, no ability to hold anyone truly accountable because no one took responsibility for getting it done is one thing. But the other way, and to the second part of our conversation, is that if everybody on the team has the same strengths and everyone's trying to do what they're good at and not what they're not good at, which is something we'll talk about later in terms of growth, learning and growth, then you end up with a very unbalanced team, and one that certainly will not be as effective as it could be.
Absolutely. I agree with you. I agree.
So that, I don't know if that's attributable to someone, but it's something that I've seen a number of different times. I don't know that I don't see an attribution for who came up with that originally. So if that's something that you're interested in, you can just Google. What did I Google? I Googled something like the story about somebody, nobody, and it just popped up. So there you go.
Excellent.
My public service announcement of it.
And something else, I was looking at something, of course, it was part of a long article. So, but it really talked about the difference between responsibility and accountability. It says responsibility is really task focused and accountability is about the impact. Like the impact of that task. So something to think about, which is why a lot of people shirk accountability because
absolutely. I think the point that I really wanted to make on that, and I love that you found that definition or the distinction between the two, is that accountability is not about punishment, right? It's not about the discipline. And so when people are feeling antsy or uncomfortable about holding people accountable, it is because of a desire to not have conflict, I think, right? And I don't want to create conflict, and I don't want to, and it's not about you having to go and hold somebody accountable. It's about them. It starts with you, right? It starts with you holding yourself accountable, which is another point for leaders. To the extent that you can help your team members accept their ownership of their role, their task, and you do hold them accountable. If they don't know what they're doing, they can't get there. So
right.
That's the point of that.
Right.
So what are some strategies that leaders can use to foster positive and productive team, right? So the leader has a role, a responsibility in team building. And I think you and I are on the same page on this. Everyone actually on the team has a role, but let's talk about the leader's role in building team. And so what are some of the strategies that a leader can use that fosters a positive and productive team environment?
You said something really key in the very beginning, and that you used the term collaboration, which is different from cooperation. I like collaboration better. What the leader needs to do is foster an environment that is conducive to collaboration. And the other thing that they can do is create psychological safety, because the next part of that, after you create the common focus, you really should be looking at some boundaries, some rules. I was going to say rules first, I changed it to boundaries, but it's really rules that the team is going to focus with. And in order to do that, you need to include, this is one of those things again, include the team in creating those rules, because people will do what they help create. It's really difficult for people to sometimes accept rules that are just handed down to them and they're told to do that without having the opportunity to participate in creating them. So really having that environment that allows for collaboration and psychological safety is huge, because as you do this, you're wanting people to feel comfortable speaking their mind and saying, I think this rule should go into place, or I don't like that rule that you dictated that we take. I don't understand the reason why we have to do things that way. Case in point, a few companies this year that I know of are moving from, for salespeople, are moving from individual rewards to team-based rewards.
Okay.
And I'm not really sure that there was a lot of discussion back and forth as to why those new things are being put in place. Those kinds of conversations are helpful to have with your team, so that they feel that they are contributing and can work with you, or at least to understand why changes are being made or why you're creating the rules that you're creating.
And so I heard a couple of different things from you in that one, and I'll start at the end, was the communication, right? Clear communication, establishing clear, open lines of communication so that team members can feel heard and understood, and that they have an opportunity to be a part of the decisions on some level, right? It's not that you're turning the organization's decision making responsibility over to them, but they understand through open, transparent communication with them. They understand why you're doing what you're doing, right? And we talk a lot about how things can get done, what gets done, and not a lot of attention is often paid to the why. And you're explaining why things are happening rather than having it come across as dictatorial. You're explaining why we're doing this, why are we making these changes, goes a long way to helping team members actually feel like they are a part of a team. The other thing that you brought up that I thought was really interesting was this concept of safety, right? And this is not safety in a woo-woo way. Oh, we need to have safe rooms and people need to feel safe. That's not, there may be some of that, but that's not what we're talking about. But the creating a safe culture, a supportive culture where team members are encouraged to take thoughtful, informed risk, right? That there are opportunities for them to take some risks, to be innovative, to be creative, and know that it's okay to make mistakes, because allowing them the safety to do that creates opportunities for them to learn, to grow, and to offer up innovative solutions to the problems that your organization is faced with.
Absolutely. You struck a chord when you said something there, and we're talking about communication, and you'd mentioned communication as something that I said. And where I really got that from, I think that where I started to make this connection with communication was a long time ago. I was talking to a friend about how I was really impressed with how he raised his children. And I was having this conversation with him, and somehow we got on the topic of communication. He goes, let me explain my philosophy when it comes to communication. My kids know they can tell me anything. When I get mad, I don't show them. I may not like what they're telling me, but we have a conversation about it, because I know that if I start showing them that what they're telling me is upsetting me, they're going to go to their friends and they're probably not going to get very good advice. And I was like, huh. That was a life lesson. I was like, wow, that's amazing, because I was always so impressed. His kids would seek out and be like, okay, I'm going out. His daughter came to him and was like, I'm going out to a club. And he was like, okay, what time are you going to be coming home? She said about 3:00. He goes, how about 2? And she was like, okay, 2:00 is okay. Right. And I was like, I was in front of him when he had this conversation, and I was like, that's amazing. He's like, because I learned a long time ago to let them know they can come to me, and I want to know what they can tell me anything. And so that we have this dialogue, and we can have this discussion. Sometimes they tell me things that upset me. I push that down until they're out of the room, because I want them to be able to feel like they can tell me stuff, and I want to keep my cool. So when I make a suggestion, it's more readily heard. And that was a lesson that I learned many years ago that I've carried with me a lot for years.
Yeah, I love that. I love that story, and that open dialogue, right?
And safety.
It's not a It's not a monologue, and it's not right. It's not a lecture. It's not a lecture. It's a dialogue, and that allows for a two-way communication when it involves feedback. Right? We talk about feedback a lot here. Feedback, the information that you get, the resistance that you hear, it's just feedback, and it's nothing to be afraid of. And so giving your team members, your employees, opportunity to be a part of the conversation, right? Where you are hearing what they have to say and listening to them. If they make a mistake, helping them get to the core of why they made the mistake, right? Not being upset about it, but helping them to learn from it so that hopefully they don't make that same mistake again, and that they make new mistakes. That, when speaking of raising kids, my father would ask me, well, why would you do that? And I would always say, well, I need to learn from mistakes. And he's like, well, there's some mistakes you don't have. Other people have already made those mistakes, right? You don't need to make mistakes that have already make new mistakes.
Yes.
Right. Yep. Be creative and make new mistakes, or to repeat mistakes I'd already made. It's like, yeah, you don't have to have those experiences. Have some new experiences and learn some new things. And so, all right, but having it be okay that people are taking risk, and that ultimately the risk that they're taking is for the betterment of your organization. And if you don't, it's not like they're not going to make mistakes. They're just going to hide it as long as they can hide it. Right.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I've worked in many organizations where you were. I'm gonna say something that it's not. I have no empirical evidence of this. This is just something that I've seen. It's been my experience that organizations that profess to be perfect are usually far from perfect. What they've done is they've created a situation where people are not open to admitting to making mistakes, and there's usually a lot of finger pointing, backbiting, and blaming that goes on there. And what that does is limit growth. It limits the growth of the organization. It limits the growth of the team, because if you don't, because mistakes are the basis of learning. That's how you learn. You learn by making mistakes. You learn, the individuals learn that way, teams learn that way, organizations learn that way. Yep. I think the key is to make mistakes that are not going to be crippling to your organization, you as an individual or your team. And that's very key. But there are a lot of teams out there, organizations out there that will say that they put on this facade of being perfect, and no one wants to take responsibility for mistakes that happen. They would rather say it's somebody else. And it's just not a great culture to promote. And I know we're going to talk about culture coming up.
You said finger pointing, backbiting, and what that conjures up for me is conflict. Mm-hmm. Right. And so in order for a team to be effective, it has to deal with its conflict. It's not avoiding conflict, right? Because in reality, at least in the way I think of conflict, you cannot avoid conflict. You can manage it, you can minimize it, mitigate it. The bottom line is that conflict exists when there are divergent viewpoints, when there are differences in how people, their approaches, their ideas, their thoughts, etc. The conflict is not the problem, right? It's escalation of the conflict into something else. And that generally happens when we are trying to make the point that I'm right and you're not, and it gets out of control, right? And so people tend to think that the escalation is the issue. It thinks that conflict itself is the issue, that the difference of opinion and whatnot, but it's that escalation. And so, what can leaders do to manage the conflict so that they don't escalate, so that the team can operate effectively? What are some strategies?
Reward productive conflict.
Mm.
So conflict does not have to end badly. And if you create a situation where people can challenge ideas, not each other, but challenge the idea in a productive way, there are some organizations that's what they do. That's their culture. Their culture is like, you come up with an idea, there is going to be somebody else that is going to look at that idea and try to poke holes in it, because it makes your original idea stronger. I think it was Culture Code. We read that book. We had that in the book club. We talked about that. But at some point in that book, they talk about Pixar, and they talk about the fact that Pixar, this organization that's put out all these great animated movies, have won tons of Oscars. They were talking to, I think, the CEO of Pixar, and he said every Pixar movie before its release is terrible. The movie that is finally released is completely different than what is introduced to them in the organization. Their philosophy is to look at these things and go, okay, let's be really candid and honest about this. We're talking about conflict here. Candid and honest about this. This is a terrible product, or this is not a very good product, or this product is okay in this point, but over here, 75% of it is not good. We want to make it better. How can we make it better? And if you look at conflict in that way, where people can feel that they can bring an idea and the idea can be challenged, and it is not an indictment of them as a person or as a team member, that is something that can be very beneficial to teams and organizations.
Absolutely. I was thinking exactly that. Focus on the problem, not the person, right? And all too often, we see that conflict escalates because it starts to get personal, whether someone projects something personal or someone perceives something as personal, right? As an attack on their personal attributes, rather than what's truly at issue, which is that there are some divergent thoughts, ideas, perceptions about how something should be or could be. And in the example that you provided, someone made the movie and thought the movie should be the way they presented it, right? And others have been invited, and the person who made that has been, I'm assuming, encouraged to say, this is not a personal attack on you, right? This is about the pursuit of the best movie possible. And we're going to collaborate to get there. You're going to put something out there. We're going to look at it, communicate, right? So all the things that we've talked about thus far, we're going to communicate other ideas that may be different than your idea. And then we're going to work together to find the best idea that creates and allows us to put forth the best movie possible. That's collaboration, right? And it started from a place of conflict, but they didn't escalate the conflict. You don't have to escalate it in order to get where you're going. The other thing that I heard you say is that this communication, this process, has to be respectful, right? And as long as we're not attacking each other, we can have a conversation about ideas and thoughts, etc., without attacking each other. And I think the way to do that is to establish clear protocols for how to move through these discussions, right? And they're ground rules. It's sort of like when you're brainstorming, if you don't know this, uh, you'll know this now, but everyone knows for the most part that when you're brainstorming, you're not tearing down the ideas that someone puts on the table. There's a time for that, but when you're doing the actual brainstorming, that is not the time to tear thoughts and ideas apart, right? You just put them on the table and then you move to a process where that happens. And so you can do the same thing for addressing conflict, right? We see that there are some differences of opinion. How do we go about moving through this, managing or resolving these differences? What's the process that we're going to use to get us from where we are to where we want to be?
Absolutely. And not that it's always easy to do, because when you present something, whether it's an idea, a strategy, or a process that you put in place, sometimes people it's like they're children, and no one wants to be told their baby's ugly. So you have to.
Oh, you know.
No comment. But
which is why it starts to escalate, right? Because right. You know.
Of course. I mean, no one wants to have confirmation about something that they're suspecting or something that they've been avoiding. That's true. Yeah. But it's not easy. But if you create a system or create an environment or a culture where people can have those feelings and then have a conversation with you about them, and you can help them come to terms or reconcile those, that will be a good thing too. Because some people are okay with it and some people will not be. One of the things that we're very careful to say on our show is that it's simple, but it's not easy.
Right.
That's what we say a lot, because
it is.
It's very simple to lay it out, but in execution, it may not be easy, because it may take you changing how you've been before. It may take you shifting some things that you haven't looked at before, or just having things pointed out to you for the first time and realizing that those are the things that you need to shift. So simple, but not easy in some cases.
Absolutely. And you just mentioned culture, right? So let's dive into this, the concept of having a culture of collaboration. And we've been talking about it in various aspects already. But what are some of the best practices for encouraging this collaboration culture? And so how can leaders encourage that collaboration culture within the team?
I guess my theme today is saying one thing and then building off of that, right? So I'll start with that. The one thing I'm going to say is people will do what's rewarded. So if you want to create that culture, you need to reward what you're trying to create. People will do bad things if they think there is a reward for them. People will do good things if they think there's a reward for them. So when you're creating that culture, you get them involved in creating that culture. We talked about that too, but then you need to reward that culture, reward the behaviors. That's key. Reward the behaviors that go into your culture, because culture is about behavior. It's how we talk about this a lot. It's how work gets done.
Right.
So it's rewarding that behavior. For that, you want to have them involved in creating that culture as well, but you need to reward it.
I was hoping you'd talk a little longer. I was looking for an article that I read that was about where you started, which is
rewarding.
What gets rewarded gets repeated,
mm-hmm.
Right? And leaders will often wonder why they're getting certain behaviors. And it's like, well, what are you rewarding? You can't say that you want A and actually reward B, right? Because if you say you want A, but you're rewarding B, you're going to get B. that's what you're going to get. So you have to be very aware about what you're doing and intentional about what you're rewarding. And so to the degree that you can do that, you can shift, you can make some changes in the culture that you have, because the culture you have is the culture you've created, right? I don't know why people think that the culture just happened to them, right? How did this happen? You created it. And so if you want something different, you have to do something different. And as Robert has said, you have to reward something different. The other things that are a part of this, and we've talked about it, is mindset, right? You need to have a collaborative mindset. You want collaboration amongst your team members. You need to be intentional about creating that. It comes off of those established common goals that you have, and communication, right? None of this happens without communication. Communication allows you to build trust. You build trust and relationship, then people are more willing to work together. We will work with people we know, like, and trust, right? And if I don't trust you, I don't want to work with you, right? If I feel like whether you don't uphold your end of the deal, whatever that is, you're doing your part, the tasks that are your responsibility, if you won't do that, or you're taking responsibility for something somebody else has done, right? You're going to either break trust or you'll never build that trust. And if you don't have trust, you're not going to have team, and you're not going to get a collaborative environment. You're going to have a backbiting, throwing under the bus type of culture. And then you'll be wondering how that happened.
Yeah. You said something, and while you were talking, something jumped into my mind, and I want to just bring that forward. The other part of cultivating that culture is to be a role model.
Yes.
The leader creates the culture. And a lot of times when you said something, you said some people think that culture just happens to them. A lot of times organizations are feeling the effect of the culture that was created by the founder of that organization. That founder may have left a long time ago, but that culture, they're living on through that culture. It's very much the same thing as when you're in a family. The parents create that culture. They bring certain ideas, certain traditions from their parents. So that is the culture that you are living in that family. So the leader creates the culture. And so you, as a leader, are the role model for the culture that you want to create. Now, a lot of times leaders, they feel that since they're leading and they're telling their team members to do certain things, they can do something different. And then they wonder why there's chaos and discord on their team. That's the reason why. You need to be a role model of what you are asking the team to do when it comes to the culture of your organization, whether it's your department, whether it's your company, whether it's your family, whatever it is. There is I won't say who told me this, but I think the phrase, I haven't conjured this thought up in my mind for a very long time for good reason. They would say to me, "Do as I say, not as I do." That is not a very good philosophy to impart to people, because people are looking at you your team members, your followers, I should say, are looking at you as the leader as to what they should be doing. And so this happens in organizations, it happens in teams, it happens in families. So yeah, I had to drop that little nugget.
As you were leading up to that, I was like, I wonder if I said whatever he's about to say, if I said it,
No, no, no.
I don't know that I've ever said that. Maybe once or twice, but I'm pretty sure
It
that
didn't
that
come
is
from
not.
you, Whitney.
I'm pretty sure. Well, I know I haven't said it to you, but I was trying to, test my memory bank. Did I ever say it to my kid or, some other kid that I was, because I worked in camps and in schools, if I've ever said that. Um, I, so I'm gonna say I haven't, but there's a possibility.
It's just not a
A
good
little.
not a good philosophy.
It's not a good philosophy.
Do as I say, not as I do. Well, but you're, I'm focused. I'm hyper focused on you.
Which is such a good point, right? We are leading all the time, right? Whether you think someone is watching or not, someone, kids, friends, families, people on the internet, right? And so if you don't want people doing what you're doing, then don't do what you're doing. Because they're watching.
Kids are particularly, how should I say, troubling when it comes to it, because they can be watching you without looking. It's amazing. They see everything, even when you think they're not paying attention. They have all kinds of techniques that they do to throw you off the set. They're paying attention to
They
everything.
are absolutely paying attention.
And so you have to be really super careful if you want to be a role model. I remember one time I was at a friend's house, and their kid made a mistake and said a bad word, and we were like, under our breath, don't react, don't react, don't react. We were saying it, and then the kid said it again, was looking at us, and we were like, don't react, don't react. And then the kid never said it again. It was looking for that. It was looking for that. Hey, did they hear this new word that I heard them say? Don't react.
And I think I've shared the story where my son, driving, and someone makes this maneuver in front of me, and he's like, idiot. And I was like,
yep. There you go.
I wonder where he got that from.
Mm-hmm.
So absolutely. And what it will do to your culture if you do that is that they won't trust you either, right? That's one of those areas where it's okay for you to do this, but it's not okay for me to do this, right? And so it will break down because they won't see you as authentic in your actions and
right.
walking your talk. And that is huge when it comes to building a culture of trust. Again, you can't get to collaboration if you don't have trust. I want to know, like, and trust you. And if I'm going to work with you, it's going to come because I know, like, and trust you.
Right.
Right. And so you have to pay attention to that.
Absolutely.
So we are at the end of our time. There are actually a couple of more things that we could have talked about, but we'll save them for the next time we talk about teams. We're talking about teams all the time. So we'll just do it the next time we do. And any final words you want to share as we wrap up today?
Always. I think that when you think about teams, I always have final words, Whitney. When we think about teams,
even when you say you don't, you do.
I always do. I'm a talker. I think that one of the key things here, if we ever talk about anything, Whitney and I talk about something on the show that you want to try out, we tend to lay out a bunch of stuff. Just grab one thing. Start with one thing and build on that. But with that, and this is something I've been talking to my clients a lot, put something in place where you reflect on how well you're doing or how well you're not doing, so that you can look at what's working well or what's not working well and put together another plan that will help you get to where you want to go.
I love that. Just pick one thing. So I'm just going to reiterate what you said. I don't need to add anything new to that. Just pick one thing. You heard something, it resonates. Pick that thing and put it into action. And then when you've got that when you've mastered that, right? See what I did there?
Yeah, I see what you did there. That's
Another component of simple, when you've mastered that, you can add something different. So, Robert, speaking of mastery and being a master, if someone wanted to work with you, how could they go about doing that?
They can reach out to me with my email. It's inspireme@roberthilliardcoaching.com, or they can just go to Robert Hilliard Coaching and look for the contact sheet there, fill that out, send that to me. Let me know some of the things that are challenging you or some goals that you have, and we can talk about that.
Awesome. Awesome. And if you want to reach out and connect with me, you can do so at shiftingintoaction.now.site, shiftingintoaction.now.site. And you can make a request to have a session with me, and we can talk about how I can be of service to you. There are a couple of ebooks there as well that are my gift to you. So pick one or many. One of them is about being a boss and how to be a better boss, right? Be a better leader, better boss. So with that, we want to thank you for joining us. We are here on Thursdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific, talking all things leadership. If there's a topic that you would like for us to cover, please drop us a line. Let us know. We would be happy to incorporate what you want us to talk about in a future episode. And so with that, pay attention to what you're doing. Create the culture, take that one action, and until next time, take care.
Bye now.